Good morning. My name is Jeremiah Best. I'm the agriculture classroom educator for New York Agriculture in the Classroom. With us today, we are going to have Catherine Brosnan with the New York Beef Council and our special guest Chef Cruz Nieves from Rella in Rochester. Today, he's going to speak with us and share a little bit about his culture and the importance of global street food and how to develop different types of dishes and how to use beef. Also looking at some of those spices and blends that you can use to put a little flair to your dish. So we also have Miss Katie Carpenter, who is working technology for us. So good morning, Chef Cruz. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well, thank you. Can you share a little bit about yourself and give us a little bit about your background? You're from Puerto Rico. You have a lot going on. You've had a great journey. We're looking forward to hearing about it. So share with us. And before you do, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in chat and we'll ask those with Chef Cruz. And at the very end, we will have some time that you can ask them some questions live. So Chef Cruz, good morning, and tell us about yourself.
So I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I really never thought that I would end up in a kitchen. It kind of like happened by accident. You know, growing up, you know, we went out to eat a little bit, but I wouldn't say that my family was very into like really food. My mom was a really good cook. She kind of like overcooked everything, but her seasonings were always on point. So that kind of like made up for it. And I guess the overcooking things is like part of the Puerto Rican culture. You know, we're not like very well educated in food. You know, that's the kind of way that we eat. We braise a lot of the meats. We cook everything well done. You know, but that's just our culture. At a very young age of 16 years old, someone asked me if I wanted a job, and I was bored. It was summertime. So I was like, yeah, sure. I could use a couple $100, you know, a week. So I started working in a restaurant as a dishwasher. And, you know, immediately I kind of like fell in love with what was happening in the restaurant. And to say that those were not really good things that were happening in there were like, you know, a lot of partying, drinking and stuff like that. So I always tell people that I fell in love with cooking for the wrong reasons. But, you know, along the lines, I learned what was the true meaning about cooking and the power that I have in my hands, basically. And, you know, I worked in a few restaurants in Puerto Rico, you know, until I was like 18. When I turned 18, I moved to Rochester. I immediately went to a school to learn English because I did not speak any English when I first moved here, like little to none. And from there, you know, I got a job as a dishwasher because I couldn't speak the language, so I couldn't work in a kitchen like right away. As soon as I learned how to speak the language better, I went and searched for a cooking job. Little did I know that they promote me the same day when I got hired somewhere else at my current job, which I really liked a lot. And that was a chain restaurant. It was a macaroni and grill. And I basically, you know, worked my way up there to like a manager position pretty much. They wanted me to move back to Puerto Rico and help them open another macaroni and grill there, but I opted out not because I left Puerto Rico to, you know, better my life and find a better future. And it wasn't never the end goal. So I moved from macaroni and grill, got a different experience through my career. Ended up at this little Italian restaurant in Rochester called Rocco. And there was like when I first like really fell in love with cooking. That's when I like understood what was the real reasons behind cooking. You know, I got to work close with the chef owner of the restaurant, which it made me like appreciate more of like what happens inside of a restaurant, the hard work, you know, that you really have to do this because you love it. The margins are like very little, you know, if you're doing good.
So what brought you to New York from Puerto Rico? How did you decide on New York? Did you throw a dart at the board or?
So my mom growing up, she had like drug problems, and then she had moved over here to kind of like better herself and, you know, go through like detox and all that stuff, a program. And I wanted to work in New York City. You know, I quickly learned you know, the best some of the best restaurants in the world were in like New York City. So when my mom was already here, she had already like, you know, rehabilitated from the drug problems and all that stuff. Um, Basically, I decided to come here because it was going to be a quick stop to be able to reach my goal, which was to get to New York City.
And so, did you get to New York City from Rochester? How?
So yeah, after working at Rocco for about 2.5 years and like learning everything about the restaurant except for the front of the house, basically. But I learned everything about there was to know about the kitchen. You know, the owner had a guy, still has a guy named Edgar, who is his ride or die. And I knew that he wasn't gonna leave, so there wasn't any place for me to grow. And as much as I loved that restaurant, I wanted to grow. So I asked him like, what should I do? Because I kind of like for a little bit, I just fell in love with Italian food. So I decided that I wanted to move to Italy. And then when I brought it to Mark was like, hey, Cruz, like, you know, you're a very talented cook. It will hurt me to lose you, but also I don't want you to go to Italy. Like, you're not going to better your career by going to Italy. And then I was reminded about New York City, Chicago, and San Francisco, which is like the biggest cities in, you know, the United States that there is to where the best food is, basically. And I had forgotten, you know, because that's what a journey is. It just takes you to different places, and sometimes you just get distracted and forget. And I met someone along those lines who had connections in New York City. I networked myself to get a stage. A stage is a working interview in a restaurant. Uh, they kind of become a little bit more rare, or basically like back in the day, you just did it for free. Like now they're not so much rare, I would say, but they have to pay you because of the labor laws. So I decided that on my vacation, when I took the restaurant takes a vacation, I decided that I wanted to work because, you know, I didn't have time to rest yet because I wasn't where I needed to be. And I went to New York City. I worked at the best Italian restaurant in the country, which is Del Posto. I would still consider that that's the best Italian restaurant because there were the accolades that they got. You know, they were the first restaurant and the first Italian restaurant in the United States to get a Michelin star. Like, you know, they were the only Italian restaurant in New York City with 4 New York Times stars. Like, you know, those things are they speak for themselves. You know that you're competing with the big leagues there. So,
So
you know,
what is a Michelin star?
so a Michelin star is basically a reviewer comes to your restaurant undercover. No one ever knows who they are. They come to your restaurant a few times a year. Sometimes they send different people. It's a Michelin guide. It comes from the Michelin Tire Company, and it's basically the highest standard that you can get in a restaurant. So the highest Michelin stars you can get is 3 stars, and that basically includes like your restaurant is completely, you're just perfect in every aspect, you know, your food, your service, you know, everything from the moment you step in the restaurant to the moment you leave, you feel like everything was perfect. The experience, you know, the interaction, the knowledge of your server, you know, and then, you know, there's the 2 stars where, you know, you're like right in the middle. And then there's the 1 star where like you're just considered like a really, really good restaurant. And it's not easy to earn these stars, you know. Again, the only places that the Michelin guide visits in the United States is New York City, Chicago, and San Francisco. And you know, for the first time last year, there's this restaurant called Blue Hill Stone Bar and Grill, and it's in Westchester, which is a little bit above New York City. And it has been a restaurant that has been on the top 20 list of the best restaurants in the world, this is a separate list that comes out every year. They do like the top 100 restaurants in the world, and it's a worldwide list. And, you know, for the first time, the Michelin guy stepped out of New York City just to this little town just to visit this restaurant. And they, you know, they gave him 2 stars, which was well deserved. Very rare you get 3 stars at the beginning. One of the biggest things about getting 3 stars is the consistency of the restaurant. So you're never going to get 3 stars the first year they come to your restaurant. So getting 2 on the first year, it's a huge accomplishment.
Well, it seems like you got some great experience in New York. You got to work at a Michelin star. You're learning Italian in the heartbed of Italian food, or one of the heartbeds in America. Now you're back in Rochester.
Yeah,
So how did you get back?
so I worked in a few other restaurants. I left El Posto after they offered me a management position again. Again, I think I wasn't ready yet. I sometimes I dwell back. It's like one of those things in my life where I like, did I actually make the right decision of not taking a management position in a Michelin star? But now that I look back, I did. I am in a really good place in my life. I have the best job I could ever ask for. So I think so I worked at different other restaurants after Del Posto, and then things didn't start working out with me in New York City. Things got expensive. I wasn't making as much money as I was making at Del Posto and other restaurants that I moved forward to. And I tell people the city got the best out of me. So after that, I just decided to come back home. I needed family, I needed friends, I needed to be in a familiar, comfortable place because I was in a very low place in my life. So I kind of like needed a little bit of support. You don't get to the top by yourself. You never do. So
No, I think that's great advice. It's about building a team around you,
yep.
And it's about, I think you mentioned it in your cooking. It's about an experience. So life is about putting positive things on the plate, but putting positive things in your life. So can you share with us, now you're the chef at Rella?
Yeah.
Can you share with us a little bit about your putting that experience on a plate? I mean, how do you develop, what is the focus of Rella, and how do you develop flavor profiles in your cooking?
So, the concept of Rella was kind of like, again, something that I'm really grateful for. Me having a great personality and also being a great cook. It's nothing that you see very often. A lot of chefs are very reserved. They don't like the spotlight. They like to be behind the scene. I always like the spotlight and everything. Not that I liked it or seeked it. It was just like, it's my personality. That's who I am. So this restaurant was built around my personality and who I am. So there's no servers here. We do everything, which is very gratifying to like be able to serve people and like take the whole experience just with these two hands, and my heart basically. The restaurant was concept was a kind of like slash wine bar slash seafood bar. We curate a really nice wine list. That's kind of like one of our main focus here. And we like to do seafood, but you cannot have a restaurant that is all seafood. We do a lot of vegetable dishes. We do, meat dishes, duck, beef, whatever it is that we have to do, we get it done to kind of like make everybody happy. You gotta find a happy medium. I tell people all the time, our menu, it's like 75% seafood, and then you have like 15% like another protein, and then like a 10% vegetables, and there's vegetables in all the dishes. I am a very vegetable forward person.
So we see you there in the kitchen. Is it possible to give us a spin around the restaurant from right where you're at?
So I'm gonna kind of like walk you guys through the restaurant. It's really small, so there's not
But does that add, since it's small, does that add to the experience that you're trying?
Yeah, it's a very, very intimate restaurant. We are kind of like a secret. So when you walk in, this is kind of like the entrance. We don't have a sign or anything. As you can see, it's all kind of like we have a little sticker at the door. This is the name of the restaurant. And we wanted it to be like that. We wanted it to be, we haven't done any promotion or anything. We wanted this to be like word of mouth.
Awesome.
I wanted to build something almost along the schools, like old school, like,
yep.
Like back in the day, there was no internet. You couldn't find anything about anything. So that was like another concept that we did with this. So when you walk in, this is the restaurant, basically. It's a corner bar. The chairs are a little bit moved in. We kind of like pre-set up. So when the person that comes and clean, which is my dishwasher and the best oyster chucker in the land, I taught him and he beat me, Well, that's the goals, that's the goal of a chef. You got to teach your people, and they should become better than you. And that makes me happy that I can say that the guy that chucks the oysters, it's better than me.
Well, so, for the students out there, I think that's a great goal. And for the teachers, you want to turn the students into teachers, and as teachers, you want to become the students. I think that's an awesome
Exactly.
message to share. So can you share, like, how do you start to develop flavor profiles, and do you do fusions or other things like that?
So we do a little bit of fusion here. I try not to do a lot of fusion. Um,
And
you
what is
know,
fusion?
so I guess fusion it's when you combine, two different cuisines in the same dish. Uh, that's not my style. If you could call Rella a fusion restaurant, you could because our menu is our menu is very international. We have dishes from Spain right now. We have dishes from Mexico. We have dishes from basically Korea. We have New England style dishes because that's kind of like the main base of the restaurant. And, I bring Spanish flavors that, I grew up with. So that
And
if you want to call us a fusion restaurant, yes, you can, but we don't do a lot of fusion dishes. Our
so,
dishes are very, very focused.
so what are some of those ingredients you're talking about as you're trying to develop a Spanish flavor? What would be some of those herbs and spices that, as I'm developing my street food dish in the classroom, I could use to make my beef dish a Spanish profile?
So whenever I think about Spanish food, and then this is just me personally, one of the first things that come into my mind when I think about Spanish cuisine is paella. Paella, it's like one of my favorite foods in the world. I'm a big rice eater. So, I'm going to give you a quick example. We don't have a paella in the menu, but we have a dish that has very, very similar flavors to a paella. It's our octopus right now. And basically what we do is we make a saffron lemon aioli to dress a potato salad. And then we do some fresh bell peppers in there to kind of like freshen up that. And then we do some green beans. Then in the bottom, we do a little bit of a smoky eggplant puree. You got green beans like kind of like stimulating as is a fava bean. You know, you got a smoky flavor coming in that's like kind of like the smoky flavor you get in the paella. And then we do chorizo sauce for octopus. And you think about chorizo, you think about the sausage to go into the paella, and the octopus kind of like simulates the seafood of the paella. It's not technically a paella, but it was a dish that was very, very inspired by that. And that's what my cooking is a lot like. I think about flavors that I remember, and I take my own spin in it, and I make them unique that way. I tell people I'm never trying to reinvent the wheel or anything. Everything that I do has been done. It's just my take on it.
And how does that Mexican or those Spanish flavors differ from, say, an Italian profile? And then I think Catherine has a question also.
Yeah. So, you think about we have an Italian, a pasta right now. So, we're using like saffron and like meat and like heavy tomatoes. Every time I think about something like Italian, I think about something like more simple, like simplicity, softer herbs like parsley, basil, things are done very, very in a simple way, but elevated. We have a squash salad right now that is very, very Italian. We just roast the squash with a little bit of Calabrian honey chili. Calabrian is a very well found chili and very well known chili from Calabria region. And, that makes a dish a little bit Italian. And then we add a little bit of goat cheese. Italians like to do a lot of goat cheese. And it's garnished with a little bit of crispy prosciutto as well. So it's all about the ingredients that you use to kind of like that's gonna separate that dish. Like I don't think I would put prosciutto on a Spanish dish, but if I want to go for something like that, there's jamon iberico, which is something that is similar to prosciutto, but it's something that is found in Spain. So it's all about like knowing your ingredients and where they come from. There's always something. That will be a fusion. If I made a dish with prosciutto and it's Spanish, and I'm adding prosciutto instead of jamon iberico, that's fusion. But I will never do that personally. I would like go out of my way to find the jamon iberico that it's going to be like true to its culture and where it's from.
So, Chef Cruz, the last dish that you were talking about with the octopus, that has so many different ingredients and so many different layers. How do you approach a dish? How do you decide, are there some basic components that you want to make sure that you have before you add to those additional layers? Or how do you decide what to add and what not to?
So, I always, all my dishes, I tell people all my dishes have a lot of work and a lot of, I like to build layers of flavor, as you just said, like, so I start with a basic, simple idea. And then that case was, I need, I wanted to do a Spanish octopus, and it all starts with the plate. I look at a plate and, and I think about the plate, like, what can I put in it, and I grab an ingredient that I want to use, which is like for this particular dish was a potato salad. That like it didn't even start with octopus. I wanted to have a dish in the menu that was made with potato salad because it was something that we did last year and people very much enjoyed. But it was kind of like getting a little bit cold outside, so potato salad was kind of like, so how am I gonna make a potato salad, which is a cold dish, and it's kind of getting cold, how do I warm this up? And that's when the idea of making the cold potato salad with a warm something on top of it to kind of like play with your brain. Our brains react different to textures, flavors, temperatures, you know so most of my dishes tend to have purées, and that's because a puree just like it's a great way to make a dish look pretty. Like, it's all about people. The first way people are ever going to eat, it's with their eyes. So most of my dishes kind of like tend to have a puree. And I was like looking for something that it was kind of like bitter, and like it was kind of like gonna like smoke the dish a little bit. So, you know, after I had my potato salad worked out, which I knew was saffron lemon aioli. So I'm gonna get a little bit of acidity and freshness from that. I'm looking for something bitter now. The acidity and the freshness, the bitterness is gonna kind of like contrast that, you know. And then you have fat that is also gonna help contrast that. So, one of my favorite things is like smoke egg, like roasting an eggplant. Like it's just something as simple as that. You roast it over an open flame and then you steam it. You cover it and then you peel it, and it's delicious. That's how they make baba ganoush. But it could be used for so many other ways. Doesn't have any tahini or anything. It's just eggplants, onions, and garlic. And that's what the idea come up. And now I have these components of like I have bitter. I have like kind of like a saffron aioli with lemon, which is like acidity and like freshness to it. Now I need something that's going to be rich, that it's going to kind of like balance everything. Like you're gonna have a little bit of everything. And you think about something rich, you think about something that's really, really heavy, tomatoes and sausage, and all that stuff. So that's where that came from, and the octopus part was just, I had to have octopus because that was like the dish that, I decided to put octopus because I was like, oh, I've had this octopus dish on the menu for a long time, and octopus and Spanish food, it's octopus became popular because of the Spanish culture. Octopus used to be super cheap until the Spanish people started using it and making great dishes with it. And that's kind of like everything comes together.